In a world where nearly everything is one click away, something strange has happened to the church. More and more believers are trading the gathering of the saints for a screen. And this feels normal, convenient. But is it faithful? Is online church actually church? Or is it a counterfeit that's quietly hollowing out your soul? Well, welcome to Canon Creed. My name is Miles, and this is the channel where we are bullish on recovering classical Protestant faith practice and piety, all in a digestible manner. So if that sort of thing interests you, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which Christian tradition you are listening from. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am not talking about those who are physically incapable of attending church or those in truly extenuating circumstances. I am speaking normatively here, to those who are able and available. So let's begin with the current trend, because this isn't actually fringe. It's unfortunately become mainstream. For example, the evangelical polling group Barna recently did a poll where they found that 22% of practicing Christians and a notable 52% of practicing millennial Christians routinely replace traditional in-person services with digital ones. And this is a crisis. More and more Christians are swapping the gathered body for digital convenience. But the question that then has to be asked is, what are you losing in that trade? The New Testament doesn't envision rogue, disconnected believers. There isn't even a hint of such a thing. Every epistle, for example, is written to a local physical gathering, never to isolated Christians who are watching and participating from a distance. And when we examine those epistles, we find a pattern of embodied commands. Things like the sacraments, greeting one another, laying on of hands, corporate singing, bearing burdens, etc. These aren't metaphorical, these are physical. Hebrews 10:25 is typically pointed to where believers are told to not neglect the meeting together of themselves, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Then at the end of the homily in 13:17, the author commands that Christians obey their pastors and elders, submitting to them, because they've been entrusted by God to watch over your soul and will have to give an account to God for such. So for those who do not know, Hebrews was a sermon written to a gathered church, and both of these verses assume a person's physical presence. Online church fulfills neither of them. And this passage also points to something deeper, that church membership, though it's not commanded verbatim, is biblically necessary because it clarifies for the pastors who is under their spiritual oversight and who they will have to give an account for before God on the final day. A similar call is found in 1 Peter 5:2-5, where we read that ministers are to exercise oversight, not under compulsion or for shameful gain, but as examples for the body of what servanthood looks like. And in doing so, when Jesus returns, their reward will be great. And likewise, those under their care are to be subject to the under-shepherds that God has placed over them. And this is the consistent message of the New Testament. Watching a live stream does not place you under discipline or protection. It just gives you the illusion of participation. But this isn't just about authority. It's also about nourishment. If you're not physically present, you're actually cutting yourself off from the means of grace that Christ has ordained for your soul, both word and sacrament. This is why the Belgic Confession, for example, states that the sacraments are visible signs and seals of something internal and invisible, by means of which God works in us through the power of the Holy Spirit. So they are not empty and hollow signs to fool and deceive us, for their truth is Jesus Christ, without whom they would be nothing. In other words, the sacraments are not just symbolic content, they're a covenantal means. You can't baptize yourself, you can't receive the supper from a screen, you can't administer grace to yourself. These require the gathered body and lawfully ordained ministers of the gospel. No word and sacrament, no church. But embodiment isn't just about receiving, it's also about giving. The church isn't a spiritual convenience store, it's a body, and if you're a Christian, you're a part of that body. In 1 Corinthians 12:7, Paul tells us that to each member of the body, God has given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. But then he proceeds in verses 12-20 to emphasize that the purpose of spiritual gifts is not for individual enrichment, but for the building up of others in the body. This means mutual dependence, and that's something that a live stream can't deliver. You can't be the hand that serves if you're detached from the body. And this theme runs throughout the entire New Testament. We see it in Romans 12, Ephesians 4, and elsewhere. The church is not merely a content hub, nor is it a weekly TED Talk with hymns. It's a covenantal gathering where Christ meets with his people through both word and sacrament to renew, sanctify, and reform them as his bride. In the Reformed tradition, we refer to the corporate worship as a time of covenant renewal, where God, through his word and sacraments, he meets us and confers his promises to us to be received by faith, which is why my hope is not to guilt trip you, but invite you. As technology becomes more and more embedded in our lives, it's important to remember that temptation comes in many forms. Don't settle for pixels when Christ is eager to give you his presence, and that happens by corporately gathering with him and his people. Christian worship isn't just informational, it is formational. A live stream might deliver content, but formation happens through covenant participation. So if you're a Christian who's been tempted to settle for screen-based church, I want to implore you, find a confessionally sound church in your area, receive Christ in word and sacrament, and serve that body with your giftings. Because playlists cannot pastor you, and pixels are not going to place you in the covenant. And live streams, while convenient, don't feed you the body and blood of Christ.